So they were found out this week that they had been part of kidnapping and the killing that was going on October 7th in Israel. And that was a big deal, sorry. So that's huge. There was also a conference that took place this week. I didn't even have time to add the slides, where 15 cabinet ministers from Israel and a bunch of other what they call MKs were all assembled talking about what to do with the Gaza Strip after the war is over. In that meeting, or that huge, it was actually a jubilant conference, they all suggested, let's take back this land and make it Jewish settlements again. Because remember, last week we talked about Ariel Sharon moved everybody out. All the Jewish settlements were moved out in 2005. Huge number of families. The whole country was divided over the issue, and Sharon had a stroke right after that event and died 10 years later. He couldn't even speak again. So that theory that I showed you at the very beginning, if you give away God's land, you're going to pay for it with your life. You will not have peace. And it goes back every time to Leviticus chapter 25, verse 23. It says, the land is mine, and it's speaking to the Jews, and it can never be permanently sold. So if any leader of Israel, after God has given them all this land back in 1967, gives away the land for peace, they pay for it, as we have seen every time. What happened to all those involved in the 1978 Camp David Accords? What happened to Sadat, Carter, and Menachem Begin? Say it again. Yep, they lost power and died, or died, one or the other. So we just want to understand this theory keeps going forward. It's like when Ahab said to Ben-Hadad, is he still alive? He is my brother. God said, I intended him to die, and you made a treaty pact with him. And here's what's going to happen to you as a result. Excuse me. So the Abrahamic Accords, this all happened before this October 7th event. Most of it happened during the Trump administration, but it was started by the two countries before Trump. Trump facilitated it a little bit. It was Bahrain and UAE, United Arab Emirates, and then Morocco and Sudan and many other countries who joined into this. Excuse me. What has always been the holdup to anybody in the Middle East making peace with Israel? The Palestinians. They've been used as a bargaining chip over and over and over again. Go back to your pre-1967 borders and we'll recognize you as a country, and da-da-da-da-da. Well, there's a lot of money left on the table and intelligence left on the table, all because of the Palestinians. So finally, the Middle East was like, we're tired of waiting for this, so we're just going to make a treaty with Israel instead. Why is it called Abrahamic Accords? I'm going to get my coffee because I got to drink something. Why was it called the Abrahamic Accords? Who are the children of Abraham? It's Ishmael, it's Esau, all these other countries that are surrounding Israel. So that's why it's called the Abrahamic Accords. It's like, we're really all one big family. Why can't we make some peace? So they did. Is a new one ready almost, Walter? Okay. So that's why these were started, and we'll just go over a few of them. Can I get a reader for this slide? Just appoint somebody, Robert, because we got to go fast.
Nearly 1 year ago, on September 15th, 2020, the United States, United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain signed the historic Abraham Accords. With this accomplishment, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain charted a new course in the history of Arab-Israeli relations by recognizing the state of Israel and normalizing diplomatic relationships. Later that year, two other Arab nations, Sudan and Morocco, followed suit and joined the Abraham Accords, raising the number of Arab states with formal diplomatic ties to Israel from 2 to 6. Today, with the new coalition government in Israel, led by Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, there are new political realities at play. This discussion brought together some of the ambassadors from the Abraham Accords, signatory countries, for their perspective 1 year later. The important diplomatic initiative is key to maintaining and strengthening peace and stability in the region while collaborating on areas of mutual interest. We also broadcast a special video message.
Don't worry about the rest of it, it's fine. But thank you very much for reading that. So all these took place, and every time I read an article about it, it was like, now the Israelis have new places to go on vacation. I'm like, that's not the important point here, you know? And now the Israelis can fly through their airspace. I'm like, that's not the real answer here. So this, I would suggest, is the peace piece, but they have no peace because it's all going to fall apart like a house of cards. The reason why Bahrain and UAE made this pact with Israel was because of one reason. Anybody know? Israeli intelligence into Iran. They're constantly being threatened by Iran. So they were like, let's make a peace treaty with Israel because they got more reconnaissance and more spy networks than we do, and they really know what's going on. So that's why that happened. But now it'll keep your eyes open to see what happens with these accords with all these different countries with Israel, in spite of what's happening since the Hamas-Israeli war that started on October 7th of last year. So there's a lot going on for us to consider. Also, I'm going to just venture to say we are already in World War III. We just don't know it yet. When the historians look back, they're going to say it started on October the 7th. And I say this because during World War I, it was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand that led to Germany and the Ottoman Empire going against the rest of the world. And it was fast because of all the treaties that had been set up. So they fell over like a house of dominoes. Everybody was already contractually in agreement to go to war on behalf of somebody else. So that took a very long time to end. Thank you. Yep, thank you so much. So what's happened since then in World War II? Okay. So in World War II, it started more subtly. It started in 1933. It took 6 years for anybody to be involved until they attacked Poland in 1939. Meanwhile, they were doing all the stuff to the Jews. They took Czechoslovakia, they took the Sudetenland, they took Austria, they took all these different countries, and nobody chirped. They just was like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? It wasn't until they attacked Poland in 1939, 6 years after Hitler had come to power, that other nations got involved. We're getting involved too, and that's part of it. And it's now the Houthi rebels that are attacking ships coming out of the Suez Canal. We have, on Friday night, I mean, this is just happening. Friday night, the United States Biden had said, we're gonna get Iran back for our 3 deaths of our 3 engineering soldiers who are from Georgia, who were attacked in Jordan. We're gonna pick a time and a place and we're gonna pay you back. So basically they struck 125 targets in 7 locations in Syria and in Iraq. People are still waiting for the fallout because of course Iran is furious, but they took these out. So back to Ariel Sharon for a minute. I just want to say his actions led to October the 7th, when he pulled the government out of Gaza. He pulled all the Jewish settlers out of Gaza. That was ground zero for a chia pet of gigantic terrorist proportions. I mean, it just grew and grew and grew. And underground tunnels everywhere, 450 miles of tunnels. I'm like, you did this, big guy. You gave away the land, wound up in a hospital, he was basically a vegetable for 9 years after this when he had his stroke. So I'm going to play this really quick because I want you to see it. Hopefully, God willing, it will play. This is about the disengagement in 2005 when Ariel Sharon pulled all his settlers out.
In 2004, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon announced plans to unilaterally disengage from Gaza. Gaza was territory that Israel had won during the Six-Day War in 1967. Israel had hoped that withdrawing from Gaza would be an important step toward peace with the Palestinians. In 2005, Israel left Gaza, uprooting 1,700 families and 21 Jewish communities. Schools and synagogues were closed, and graves and military bases relocated. Greenhouses and other structures from previously Israeli communities were left behind for Palestinians' use and benefit. Yet upon Israel's withdrawal, Palestinians instead entered these previously Israeli-owned buildings and destroyed them, along with several synagogues. Following Israel's withdrawal, the Palestinian Authority failed to transition smoothly into full control of Gaza. This leadership vacuum led to the terrorist group Hamas's rise to power. To this day, Hamas diverts humanitarian resources away from the people in Gaza to buy weapons.
So what did they just say? Hamas does what? Diverts humanitarian resources to conduct terrorist activities. The tunnels, the weapons, the training, all of it. So they're always crying, the Palestinians. Are the Palestinians ever get any of this aid? Any of this money from the United States, from Canada, from Great Britain, from the EU? No, it's going right into this. Where do these tunnels come out in Gaza? Hospitals, schools. Absolutely, you said it. Hospitals and schools. So they're making sure you can't bomb us because it's a hospital. You can't bomb us because we're a school. So they're putting their own children and their own sick at risk so that they can ensure nobody's going to touch them. I just want you to see the deceptiveness of all of this and understand it.
And dig tunnels for their war against Israel. Since 2005, more than 15,000 rockets have been fired into Israel by Gaza-based terrorist groups.
We're going to go on to the next one. Is this on? Oh, I can't get it to advance. I'm sorry? That one. Again. Okay, this is another one about what happened in the area after.
Refer to Ariel Sharon as the bulldozer. Other Israelis remember him far less fondly. This is Nitzan, about 15 kilometers north of Gaza, and now home to some of the 9,000 Jewish settlers who were kicked out of the Palestinian enclave in 2005. Many residents here still feel bitterly betrayed by Sharon after he controversially ordered the army to remove them from their homes. During the years the Gush Katif settlement was built up, we were made to feel that what we were doing was important, both for the country and ourselves. And then in 2003, when Sharon unveiled his plan to pull out of Gaza, we felt betrayed. It was like a huge slap in the face.
I'm going to stop it there for the sake of time. So we talked about the embassy move, but I just wanted to show you how unbelievable this was. We did the Abrahamic Accords. We're going to talk about this in 1 second. So just remember that in 2005, when Ariel Sharon removed the Jewish settlements, 1,700 families and 21 communities that were in the Gaza Strip, the eyes of Israel were shut to what was going on in Gaza after 2005. They didn't have a presence there. There weren't any police there. There weren't any soldiers there. You can say it with me now. Gaza was self-governed. They keep asking for a two-state solution. This is what happens when you go for a two-state solution. And nobody wants them. Egypt does not want the Palestinians because they know they can't rule them. Neither does Jordan, because guess what? They know they cannot rule them. It's going to be a terrorism a situation for anybody. So this is, I think, the most significant piece when we look at the Bible and we see the idea of peace, peace, but there is no peace. We see at the bottom of the statue of Nebuchadnezzar's image that his feet of clay and iron that don't mix. It makes the whole thing unstable. So this is the peace that makes the countries unstable because of what's going on in Israel, and also because of in Joel.
Peace in the Middle East is the holy grail of foreign policy.
Thanks.
In the 7 decades since the founding of Israel, only Egypt and Jordan have signed peace treaties. But in September 2020, Israel signed a historic peace agreement known as the Abraham Accords with the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain on the steps of the White House. This unprecedented moment was the first step in not only normalizing public relations and ushering in peace, but opening the door for more agreements between Israel and other Arab and Muslim nations. The Abraham Accords were almost...
Look how many countries were planned to be a part of this. It's a huge amount.
Almost immediately followed by Sudan and then Morocco, joining the agreement just a few weeks later. With this, Israelis can finally fly to places like Dubai, Khartoum, and Abu Dhabi.
Yay,
Maybe
vacation.
a Chabad house in Tehran is next. But how did this deal come about? Who were the players at the table? And what did negotiators have to overcome to make this dream a reality? Since its creation in 1948, Israel has had to suffer invasion and incursions from surrounding nations. Israel regularly warred with Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and other countries in the years since its founding, right up until the Yom Kippur War of 1973, and what has come to be generally known as the Arab-Israeli conflict. Since then, Israel has made monumental strides when it signed a peace deal with Egypt in 1979 and then Jordan in 1994. However, in 2002, the Arab Peace Initiative unified Arab countries against other such peace deals, insisting that peace could not succeed until Israel agreed to return to pre-1967 borders and ending the conflict with the Palestinians. This, more or less, left the peace process at a standstill, until 2019, when representatives from Israel and the UAE started meeting secretly due to mutual concerns over Iranian influence in the region. In June 2020, Youssef El Otaiba, the UAE's ambassador to the United States, wrote an op-ed in an Israeli newspaper calling out Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for considering an annexation of the West Bank. He put it clearly, it's either annexation or normalization. Normalization means making their peaceful relationship official. The keyword normalization was not something that had been proposed so publicly before. In the wake of these statements, American officials moved to facilitate talks between the two nations. On August 13, 2020, the US, Israel, and the United Arab Emirates announced in a joint statement the intention to sign a peace agreement. Almost immediately after the announcement of the UAE deal in August, Bahraini officials contacted the White House saying, "We want to be next." And 29 days later, King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa made it public that Bahrain had brokered a similar deal with Israel. Despite the first UAE president, Sheikh...
Okay, so what is everything hinging on? All these Abrahamic Accords, they all said one thing was the hitch in it all. No more settlements in the Palestine areas, and we'll have this agreement with you. So after this Gaza business, what's going to happen to these Abrahamic Accords? They're going to get ripped up. They're going to evaporate.
Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan labeling Israel an enemy in 1971, there have been reports of behind-the-scenes economic and even diplomatic relations in recent years. Bahrain, on the other hand, has had informal ties with Israel for over 20 years. And with increasing unease about Iranian aggression in the Persian Gulf, that relationship has steadily grown stronger over the last decade. The Accords aren't so much the putting aside of differences for the sake of peace, as they are officially recognizing and establishing these relations. In February of 2020, leaders of Sudan and Israel started talks about normalization. It began with opening Sudanese airspace for Israeli-registered planes. In May, Israelis flew in a medical crew to help Sudanese diplomat Najwa Gadeldam, who was managing the negotiations between Sudan and Israel. Gadeldam unfortunately lost her battle with the disease and never got to see the fruits of her labor when on October 23, 2020, Sudan joined the Peace Party, becoming the third nation to become a part of the Abraham Accords, signing retroactively. Sudan, in a way, is an even bigger accomplishment. The country had ties to Iran and had been labeled by the US a state sponsor of terrorism. Israel also claimed they were helping Hamas smuggle weapons into Gaza. But in 2016, Sudan cut ties with Iran and halted arms smuggling into the Gaza Strip. This greatly eased tensions between the two countries. In Morocco, there has been a Jewish presence for centuries. Most notably, after the expulsion of Jews from Spain, whole communities fled to the North African nation. By the 1940s, as many as 250,000 Jews lived in the country, making up 10% of Morocco's population. But when Israel declared its independence, upheaval erupted in Morocco. Jews en masse fled Morocco due to persecution such as boycotts and riots. Though Morocco and Israel did establish some diplomatic relations following the Oslo Accords in the mid-90s, it wasn't long before those ties fell apart after.
So I just want you to understand, Morocco was majorly Jewish. It was 10%, which is a huge amount of the population, from 1492 to 1948. Pretty funny that literally Israel becoming a nation caused all the Jews in Morocco who were Spanish originally to go all the way back to Israel. So God's moving the chess pieces.
After the outbreak of the Second Intifada in 2000. But informal relations did continue, and Israelis could still visit on organized tours. In December of 2020, the US made a bold move and formally recognized Morocco's claims to the resource-rich Western Sahara, which, in exchange, re-established diplomatic ties between Morocco and Israel. And with that, the Abraham Accords had its fourth member. Despite the establishment of long-sought-after peace, these treaties have had vocal reactions, some of joy and praise, but some that are skeptical and have outright condemned it. In Israel, lawmakers on the left showed support for the deal, including Yair Lapid, often a vocal critic of Netanyahu, while some on the right, like Yamina party leader Naftali Bennett, expressed reservations that the deal would stop Israel from fully annexing the entirety of the land of Israel. Divided opinions emerged from the Arab side, revealing that Arab solidarity along the Muslim nations aren't as homogenous as the rest of the world might have thought. A New York Times op-ed characterized the division as those who want to let the future bury the past and those who want to let the past keep burying the future, noting the UAE aims to move forward while Iran staunchly opposes progress. Saudi Arabia gave tacit approval to the deal, and the Arab League, a 22-member body of Arab states, declined to formally condemn it. That lack of condemnation from the Arab League resulted in the Palestinian Authority protesting, with Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki conceding his chairmanship of the League's council. Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza had relied on support and solidarity from the other Arab and Muslim nations to put pressure on Israel. The Abraham Accords got Israel's annexation of the West Bank to stop, but that left Palestinians in the same position they've been in for years, but now with a bigger fear than ever that Israel's sovereignty over the West Bank will be legitimized, reducing the Palestinians to a bargaining chip. Since its founding, Israel has been isolated from its neighbors behind an iron wall of aggression, violence, and threats of economic boycott. But with the arrival of the Abraham Accords, attitudes in the Arab world seem to be finally shifting. Saudi Arabia hasn't signed
What's up there?
peace in the Middle East.
Oh my goodness, there we go. So you just saw what happened with Morocco, with Sudan, and all these other countries, but we can kind of look and see how fragile these are. They're all based on no more settlements in these Palestinian areas, and that's not what's going to happen. Excuse me. I'm going to skip past this. So let's talk about Iran's threat to Israel. This is where the Jews were sent when, after the Babylonian invasion in 586 BC, when they were later on, was it Belteshazzar who brought all the things of the temple in and had the mini Tiglath Upharsin on the wall, and then they were invaded by the Persians and they went to Persia. So there are still Jews living in Iran who keep their ethnicity under wraps and have for centuries. They never return to the land. So the question is, will Iran pursue its goal to cross the nuclear threshold and master a nuclear device, long-range missiles capable of hitting Israel? Could the development trigger a nuclear arms race in the Arab Middle East, especially since we are witnessing the development of an Arab front in opposition to Iranian hegemony? Israel has concerns over the future of the Palestinian Authority, with one issue centering on what to expect for the demise of Mahmoud Abbas, the chairman of the PA, who will be 88 in 2023. Are Iranian drones the later threat to international stability, and is the significance of Iran emerging as an actor in the Russian-Ukrainian war? What role will new technologies such as lasers and cyber warfare play in the Middle East conflict? So, really quick, how were the 3 engineers from the Army killed in Jordan? I'm sorry? Right, a drone. That's what killed them, and that's exactly what this article was saying way before it actually happened. This is from January of 2023. So this has sparked us hitting 125 targets in 125 areas within the 7 different places in Syria and in Iraq. We haven't stepped into the next country yet. So I just want you to see the threat to Israel is all around them. As we already know, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Islamic Jihad, with active assistance from Iran, have been concentrating and turning their arsenal of thousands of missiles into precision-guided munitions, PGMs, with sophisticated electronic systems designed to overcome Israelis' formidable array of counter-missile systems, which is Slingshot and Iron Dome. What is the likelihood of an outburst of Palestinian violence on the scale of a second intifada with Hamas and Islamic Jihad joining forces against Israel and possibly intervening from Hezbollah in Israel's northern border? Again, this was written January of 2023, before it happened. This author was spot on. He's like, they're going to use proxies. And this is what Iran does. It's what Russia does. They're not directly involved. They're going to feed all of the weapons and the tunnels and the money to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to all these groups. They're going to have a violent uprising, and then our response to their retaliation will be nuclear, or it'll be cyber attacks, or it will be any of these other things. So this article that was written a year before it happened, or 10 months before it happened, was spot on. Can I get a reader from this one? And I want you to look at this Tehran Times, just one wrong move. All these red dots are not where Iranians vacation. Those are all the spots they can hit with a weapon from Iran. Go ahead, Martha.
Many issues need to be considered when assessing the prospects of 2023 and their implication for Israel's national security, as well as the threat it faces from neighboring and distant enemies. Will the year 2023 be different from the previous one, or will it unfold according to the French writer Jean-Baptiste Alphonse Carre's famous adage, the more it changes, the more it is the same? Among those fateful questions stands first and foremost the question relating to Iran's nuclear program, and whether Iran will pursue its race to cross the nuclear threshold and master a nuclear device loaded into long-range missiles capable of hitting Israel. Could this development trigger a prelude to a nuclear arms race in the Arab Middle East, especially since we are witnessing, of late, an Arab awakening in opposition to Iranian hegemony? As a result of Iran's stances toward Israel, what are the prospects of war between Israel and Iran via its proxies in the region? To what extent will the Arab states coalesce around Israel in order to contain Iran's ambitions in the Middle East? Can I just say one thing?
Go right ahead.
One of the problems with this Hezbollah thing up in Lebanon, what they're using are these anti-tank missiles, but they go so low to the ground that the Iron Dome can't stop them.
I didn't even know that. So what other proxies is Iran using? You can tell me a country, you can tell me a terrorist group. What other proxies do they got? The Houthis, that has been in the news all over the place. Who are the Houthi rebels? Yeah, they're youth from Yemen, and they've been given weapons. And this long war between Saudi Arabia and Iran has been going on as a proxy war between the two countries for decades. So Saudi Arabia feeds the Houthi rebels, they feed one side of Yemen, and then Iran backs the Houthi rebels. So all this is going on constantly. Can I get another reader for this slide?
Israel is deeply concerned over the future of the Palestinian Authority, with the issue centering on what to expect after the demise of Mohammed Abbas, the chairman of the Palestinian Authority, who will be 88 in 2023. Would Hamas replace the Fatah-led Palestinian Authority? And if so, what would be its relations with Israel? On a regional level, Israel is concerned by the lack of stability around its borders. With the unfolding dramatic events, questions arise concerning the future of Lebanon, Libya, and Iraq as viable or failed states. On the other hand, is an armed conflict brewing between Algeria and the Kingdom of Morocco? Is the conflict over the Grand Renaissance Dam on the Nile in Ethiopia going to degenerate into an armed conflict between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia?
Okay, so let's stop there for 1 second. Do you all know about the Renaissance Dam?
It's the dam, I think it's the dam that Ethiopia was going to put up, and Egypt was saying, you'll stop the water from coming down to us if you put that up.
Absolutely. So it's much bigger than the Aswan High Dam that Egypt built for their own benefit. And now when they build this Renaissance Dam, it is humongous, and basically it'll be a trickle of water that gets to Egypt after this is built. So Egypt without the Nile is like, I don't know what. It's going to be a major mess. Go ahead and finish the slide real quick.
Is there an end to the war between Saudi Arabia and the Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen? What role will cyber warfare play between the Middle East actors? What can be expected from the radical ISIS, Daesh, and Al-Qaeda in the Middle East and Africa?
Yeah, so these are all excellent foreign policy questions. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a friendship chart of the Middle East. So the countries and the terrorist groups are listed across the top and on the side. And wherever you see red, they're not good. Where they're green, they're good. And where they're orange, it's complicated, it says at the top of the chart. So you can see it's not a very good situation. It's complicated. Can I get a reader for this one really quick?
Will Turkey continue to expand its presence in the Middle East and Africa? What are the implications on Turkey's foreign policy if Erdogan loses his presidential election in June of 2023? What if Turkey decides to revoke the Treaty of Louisiana, signed 100 years ago, as some observers suggest, a treaty that governs inter alia Turkey's problematic relations with Greece as well as with its Arab neighbors? To what extent will the war between Russia and Ukraine have an impact on the Middle East? Is America's influence in the Middle East waning? All these issues impact Israel, its security, and its foreign and defense policies.
Very good. So I just want to get into this a little bit. I know we're not going to have time for all of it, but we're finally at least up to the Israeli-Hamas war and what's going on there. So we want to know a lot about this because all the nations are getting involved. Almost every single country in the Middle East is involved. North Africa, Europe is involved, the United States is involved, Canada, New Zealand. It's like, who isn't in this right now? So this is going on more about Turkey. And it's about international shipping too, because now that has been threatened. What are these major super tankers that are going around the world, like they come to Norfolk, right? You see them, and they're stacked to the gill schlitz with all these containers. What are they having to do now that there's all these problems in the Suez? And how long does that take, Roger? It's 28 to 29 days. That's another month added on to anything you're going to ship from Asia to Europe to whatever. And there's another little problem besides the Suez Canal and the Houthi rebels. What would that be? It's closer to home, called the Panama Canal. What's going on with the Panama Canal? It's too dry. God's hand is in it all. International shipping has been completely interrupted by 2 canals that are no longer viable. The Suez, which has the Houthi rebels firing on ships, and Canada, United States, Great Britain, all the English-speaking countries have their navies there. They're attacking the Houthi right now as we're speaking. In the Panama Canal, what's the problem of a drought? I thought it was all seawater. Absolutely, because the fresh water fills up the locks that are upstream and flows down to the Pacific and to the Gulf of Mexico. Now there's not enough water to even do that. So are we reaching an international commercial crisis or commerce crisis? Absolutely. Are things going to cost more because people can't ship? Look for the prices to go way up. So this was the international reaction to the Hamas-Israeli war when we started. Like right after it happened in October, all these blue countries were supporting in Israel. The light blue condemned all violence, the orange condemned Israel, and the red supported Hamas. It's like, oh my gosh. So Syria, Lebanon, Iran, Algeria all said, we're on Hamas's side. Yes, Randy.
It's probably not important for your discussion, but last fall, the Mississippi River was also too low to carry a lot of the ships. They had to reduce their weight.
Wow.
Which was grain. They're big grain haulers down the Mississippi. And they, as well as the Panama Canal, had to really reduce what they could carry.
They have. So this map does not look like this now. I would say much more of it is red and orange because they've switched sides. This at the bottom is the number of rockets that have been sent into Israel. And you can see 2014 and 2021 and 2008. This is why they were on their own. Okay, so it's basically the 2005 is where that has that disengagement, and it was the lowest it had ever been. So since then, it's just crescendoed because they can have all these underground tunnels and can do all this damage. This is a picture, and I was like, there's got to be a picture of all these tunnels in Gaza. Those red lines are what they found so far, which is pretty incredible. So we'll pick up next week because I think Sunday school's over, but this is a great illustration. It's only 6 feet high, and it's only about 30 to 100 feet deep where all these tunnels reside. So we'll pick up next week. Thank you.